If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell to be notified of future videos. Thank you. Hello Internet, we are back. We've got General Jock here with us. This is his last episode of his life. But I can tell you, I'm quite sure we're going to bring the man back. He's very popular. So you're welcome here. Thank you for coming again. Can you tell us now that you are done with 32 Battalion, what happened to your career further? Because you're going to become a general officer now.
Yes, of course. Hello there. I suppose everybody is saying, wow, here we come to the last stretch. Either they tune in here and they say, oh, no, that it's die alweer, and then they can tune out again. But here I am for the last time. I looked at the dates. This is my last 13 years of my 35. So when I left 32 Battalion at the end of 87, I had 13 years left. But before I finalize this whole story, I want to say again, you just touched on it now, Chris. This is just, it's scratching the top of the iceberg. There's so many things you could talk about. It's just amazing. Then I wondered, I've been thinking to myself, but now, why did I do this? Why did I agree to talk to Chris about this? I remember a couple of months ago, Rick Lobb of 32 Battalion, he actually contacted me and said, listen, there's out with the name of Koos Kotze that wants to speak to you. And I said, yeah, okay, we'll see what's going to happen. When I got back to my office again, you had already tried to contact me, Koos. So it's not me that's volunteering to do this. It's you that's pushing me into a blick here. Now I'm thinking to myself, now, what have we achieved out of this? Well, number one, it's called legacy conversations. So it goes about putting history on some other format, either this way or a book or both. That's the first thing why I said, okay, let's do it. Secondly, I had already told you, and I think the Oaks are now heard enough about my memoirs, which I've only got about 60, 70 pages of. What did I get out of these conversations with you? It's forced me to fast forward my research. And on that point, if you haven't done the research properly, I don't think people should use this type of a thing that we're busy with now to do research in the future. Because I'm actual fact very glad that people are contacting me and saying, listen, you actually got your facts wrong, which is cool. You want to see how many people have contacted me on WhatsApp? Maybe there's a few here too that are still going to do that. I mentioned it in the previous, one of the previous conversations, that people had said to me, man, jy was nie op Vryburg rugby gespeel, jy het op Vryheid rugby gespeel. Thank you. So I'll make sure if it goes on paper, it's correct. So that's another thing I'm gaining out of these conversations. For instance, this afternoon, just before you and I made contact with each other, I get a WhatsApp. Marathon Jock, of generaal, whatever, I can't remember. Kan jy vir my onthou, my naam is Bones Beneke. That's the one I said to Koos. Where Bones says to me, and I can remember him clearly. He was a lieutenant then in 87, and he was the quartermaster of 32 Battalion. And you remember I told you the drama we had with General Badenhorst. The first thing I did when I got to 32 Battalion is I went into there and I said, come. I don't know if Badenhorst is going to jump on us again, but let's have a look at this log here. And he says, no, that was great. He enjoyed it. I taught him a bit about log. So Bones, baie dankie dat jy vir my terugvoer gee, want it help. It's helping to make sure that all the facts are right. And on that point, please don't stop doing it. Anybody that watches any of my episodes and knows that I got a name or a date or a place wrong, that's one of my main reasons why I'm doing this. You let me know. You can get my contact number from Chris if you want to. And come on to WhatsApp and say, yeah, your facts are right. Or why didn't you mention any names? I've still got a monkey on my shoulder about that. I'm so scared I'm going to leave names out and unethically sort of destroy friendships. I'll rather just mention the main, the executive names that I can remember. So, Koos, thank you for that. I have scored out of this. Right, 1988. General Liebenberg couldn't been very angry with me after I left 32 Battalion because he gave me a senior post as Chief of Staff of Northern Cape Command, which was a newly established command. It was only established the year before, 86, I think, 86 or 87. And I arrived there, and now I'm back in Kimberley. Remember, I spent 6 years in Kimberley where I met my wife and all that sort of a thing. And if I add up the 6 years prior to this and the 6 years that I'm going to serve now, it's exactly 1/3 of my career that I spent in Kimberley at different places. I remember arriving there, reporting to the officer commanding, Brigadier Vos Bernardi. He was my command OC. The last 2 of the 6 years was Brigadier Mos Grobler, who we lost last year. Very good friend of mine. They were housed in some of the buildings of the old Henry Slechtkamp Officers Club, the warrant officers and NCO's club. There wasn't a headquarters for this newly established command, so they just moved into all these little loose buildings. But I'll talk about how we actually evolved from them. Command Sergeant Major was Sergeant Major Farley Smith. What a great infantryman. I wonder if he's still with us. I'm going to mention the executives. CS1, which is personnel, was Colonel Joe Momberg. We also lost him a couple of years ago. Dan Tyrion, also a very good friend of mine, took over from him. Intelligence, CS2 was Charlie du Plessis. A very dry-witted man, very intelligent man, I can remember that. Operations was run by Leon Groenewald, all colonels. Fonnie van Niekerk was the quartermaster, or rather the loggie. And then we had Lieutenant Colonel Dave Roux, who was with Command Communications, actually part of CS2. We had, excuse me, you'll find this on internet. We had groups, and each group, I'm talking now about commandos, not commandos, specifically part-time forces, but commandos in particular. We had certain groups with commandos under them that served all over the Northern Cape, which is quite a large area, by the way. I remember bumping into a lot of them on staff visits and on command conferences. And a lot of them can remember me and I can remember them from the Danitron Combat School days. Because we had to do those 6 years with a lot of commando members. Sout van die aarde. Good, solid, down-to-earth people, our commando forces. The 206 commandos that we had, I can't remember now. But what great people. What great people they were. So you had them, and then you had the Citizen Force Regiment, Kimberley Regiment. I don't know if it's still called Kimberley Regiment. I know the commandos have been disbanded. You and I have had a private conversation about that, because why you would ever want to disband the commandos, I would not know. They never really opposed any threat to any government, but that's beside the point. So if Kimberley Regiment is still Kimberley Regiment, I'd like to greet them too. They was an old regiment, like a lot of our regiments. The silverware they had in there, the history, I mean, Kimberley's history itself is amazing. Kimberley Regiment was attached to that, obviously. Now, I'm not going to get I hope I'm going to get all the dates right, but it doesn't really matter. In the beginning of my 6 years in Northern Cape Command, the following things happened. Not necessarily in the sequence either. First of all, the Danitron Combat School actually became the intelligence school, Danitron Intelligence School, and they moved from Kimberley after all those years to Potchefstroom. They moved into the lines, if I've got it right. Here we go again. If I'm wrong, let me know. They moved into the lines in Potchefstroom of 3 South African Infantry Battalion. They swapped. They came, 5SAI came to Kimberley, but they moved into a new base. They didn't move into the old base where Danitron Combat School was. So there goes Danitron back to Potchefstroom, and here comes 5SAI back to, or not back to Kimberley. All I can remember, Marius van der Riet, 6'11", groot man, 6'11". Hy het homself genoem Marius van der Riet. So laat jy weet how tall he was. He's been in America, an American citizen now for almost 20, 30 years already, doing very, very well for himself. Marius was the commander. There were other commanders after him. Can't remember necessarily in what sequence. Bula Niman, I think, was also a commander of 5SAI. And when the combat school, or the Danitron intelligence moved to Potchefstroom, a little bit later on, yeah, I think towards the 1990s, the anti-aircraft regiment and 10 ACAC together combined under the command of Colonel Sid Warren came from Eysterplaat and moved into where the old Danitron Combat School was. That's the last time I saw them. Then you had opposite the airport, you had, they'd been there since the middle 70s, one maintenance unit. I think they used to be in Lens. They moved in there, but when I got there, there will be already a very well-established unit. I remember Mani Blighnout, commandant. He was the commander. And in my time, he was followed up by Johan Piper. One of my old quartermaster sergeant majors from 5SAI, John Cato, he was the RSM, I think, for the full period. So that was one maintenance unit. So by the time I settled down, in the very early years or months, and let's say the first 2 years, combat school moved, 5SAI moved in. Later on came the anti-aircraft gunners, and one maintenance unit was there. I had good times right throughout and busy times, because besides these units that were there and the regiment and the commandos that kept you busy, later on, and I'll get to it now, 3-2 Battalion also arrives in Pomfret. That's in our area. 3-1 Battalion also arrives in Smitsdrift. That's in our area. So these 6 years here was a massively busy period in my lifetime that I can remember. Not that there was a quiet period in the 35 years in any case. Then I remember in the second half of 89, I had the honor of attending the Joint Staff Course. Now, the Joint Staff Course is an amazing experience. That's where all the arms of the service, the Army, the Air Force, the medics, the Navy, and a lot of other senior personnel, that's, Denel people and so on, all get together on a very adult, very senior course for about 6 months, where you actually just discuss strategy. It's a strategic course. It's got nothing to do with the tactics on lower level. Excuse me. Interestingly, Eddie Viljoen was also on that staff course with me, and we've got great memories of those 6 months on the Joint Staff Course at the South African Defence Force College. He was the commander then, Brigadier George Grace of Savannah Note. So we did the Joint Staff Course in the second half of 89. That was on that same course as when the Berlin Wall fell. So the same period that we were on that course. And there we knew strategically the world is about to change. And if you want to have a look at change that I mentioned in my previous 32 Battalion conversation with you, is inevitable. But here it came, big scale. Yeah, the world was changing now, for obvious reasons. A very interesting course. A lot of people say that later on, the recognition of previous learning, if you had done a joint staff course, it was in actual fact equal to a doctorate. We just don't call ourselves doctors, but that was a doctorate. We had to write a thesis and blah, blah, blah. What a course. Very, very interesting. So the wall falls, 89 things start happening, and into 1990. Of course, in 89, 32 Battalion arrives, and they move into Pomfret. If I'm not mistaken, it was 89. Help my reg asseblief. So there's also things to keep you busy. You remember I said we moved into smaller little buildings, but it had already been planned that on a little burnt out area in one maintenance unit, one of the old buildings burned down. In that area, the new headquarters for Northern Cape Command was going to be built. And that was interesting. It took about 18 months, 2 years planning it, seeing the foundations going down, seeing the whole headquarters being built. That was actually something to remember. It was a great experience. Then, of course, in 1990 came the political changes I spoke about, the release of Mandela, the Cadessa negotiation started, and there we went, full cycle, keeping us busy like you've never seen before. Little things I can remember specifically too about 1990. My brigadier and myself and about 15 others started, Marius van der Riet included, started riding bicycle. I remember it cost a mess. I bought a bicycle for 800 Rand, which is a lot of money those days. It was a Peugeot Mirage. Een van die goed is wat so lig is, you know, those little light ones. And we were taking our cycling seriously. Over weekends, you do 120 kilometers a go. And we actually rode, this little group of ours, I remember that so well. This little group of ours actually rode, some of us 2, some of us 3, some of us 4 Augusts. We actually rode, I personally rode 3 Augusts, 89, no, 90, 91, 92. At the age of just over 40, so I was very proud of myself riding the August. Great days. I remember too here in 1990, now I'm not sure of this either, I can't find it on internet. But I remember the South African Rugby Union, SARFU. Danny Craven was still alive at that stage. And they came to Kimberley for historical reasons to have there, if I'm not mistaken, 100th annual general meeting of SARFU. And that was actually held in the same hall, the dance hall that I was talking about in Jim Reeves' time, the movie that old Jim Reeves shot there. We actually hosted the, I think it was the 100th annual general meeting of SARFU. Danny Craven had nog voorgesit. He was the chairman of that one. These are just things that are coming through my mind all the time. Then the Bushmen arrived to Schmidstrift, 3-1 Battalion. Scores van Wyk was their commander. And that also kept us busy, amazingly so. But a great period. Also, yes, somewhere in the early, I think it was 1990, I made a couple of notes here. The De Beer Stadium, where Griquas beat Northern Transvaal in 1970 in the Currie Cup. That stadium closes down, and we had to take our whole stadium and a rugby setup, and that became Griquas for 1 year. That became Griquas home field at the fence, down there where the Danitron Combat School used to be. What was his name? Andre Markgraaf. Still used our grounds, that I can remember. Then also there in 1991, every year or every second year, the Defence Force used to have a Defence Force parade where you had thousands of marching troops, your vehicles, your fly past with your aircraft. That I think was annually or biannually, I can't remember. Please help me. Let me know these things and I'll fix it up. We had that turn, and I was still the chief coordinator of that SADF parade. Mos Grobler was then my brigadier. That was also just amazing. And of course, in 1992, I'm pushing this because I'm halfway through. 1992, as we know, 3-2 and 3-1 battalion closed down. We touched on that. Not a nice period to remember. Then in 1993, towards the end of 1993, it was a very adult thing. Chief of the Army used to say, listen, guys, you are now senior colonels. The posts are getting fewer and fewer as you go up in the hierarchy. I think they used to call it the vangkraal. The vangkraal is they used to take certain people and identify them at different stages of their careers and say, all right, that oak is a future general, and that oak is going to be this, and that oak's going to be that. So GS1 was the personnel man, General Dupree Coetzee. He's not with us anymore. He calls me to Army headquarters and says, listen, Jock, you've done well. You've had a colorful and a nice career, but that I think is where it's going to stop. Which is openly said to you, and that's great. I'm not trying to be Jannie Jammergat again, but this is how it happens. So he says to me, but now listen, you've done very well. Do you want to come to Pretoria? You won't necessarily get promoted, but you want to come to Pretoria for your last 7 years? Or what would you like? I said, General, if you don't mind, if there's a place down in Port Elizabeth, if I can get back to the Eastern Cape, I'll be very, very grateful. So he phones me about a week later. He says, listen, there's no post for you in Port Elizabeth, but we've got a group headquarters, Group 8, which is also a group of commandos. That is open in East London. I said to him, General, please, that would be great. It's actually a demotion, but yes, that would be great. I'd love to go back to the Eastern Cape. So there I went after 6 years as a chief of staff. One of my old buddies, Chris Heman, and I were really sort of knowledgeable, like the rest were, on the management processes of the army. We had already sort of got that going. We were already 6 years chief of staff. And I was going to miss that going to a group. But how grateful was I not? I said to him, right, General, transfer. Terug Oos-Kaap toe. Let's go to the Eastern Cape. So at the end of 93, I get transferred to Group 8 in East London, which was quite an experience, I must say. Because you can imagine now, Koos, that is in 94, I'm now there. You've got 4 months before the new South Africa. Certain things have to start taking place. I had a reasonable staff, I must say. I didn't have an appointed 2IC at Group 8. I remember my group sergeant major was Sergeant Major Mac Beets. A lot of paratroopers will remember Mac Beets. Well, not only paratroopers, a lot of people will remember Mac Beets. The chaplain was a was a Dominee Petzer. So I get there and things start going at a fast pace. The IEC, Electoral Committee, are starting to organize all the ballot papers and so on for the elections that are coming up in what was it, 27th of April 94. And at Group 8, we were running at one stage, it would look like it was an Air Force base. We must have had about 7 or 8 various types of helicopters that were brought in to take all these ballot papers and personnel all over the far off regions of the Transkei and the Ciskei and so on. In my case, the Ciskei. And that was keeping us busy. Then, of course, we pick up that the CDF, the Ciskei Defence Force in my case, they're not happy that they are now going to disintegrate. They're not a defence force anymore after the 27th of April. And that was another situation that was very, very cool. The Chief of the Army sent us a mechanized company from 5SAI in Bloemfontein, because we picked up the feelings that these guys might even have a physical standoff. You're not going to come in here and take over the CDF. So in came this company. I can't remember the company commander's name, but I do remember that the majority of everybody, almost down to drivers in that company, Ratels and so on, Ratel 90s included, were all permanent force members, because it was a very touchy situation. And I remember we went in there to say, right, on that specific day, we are arriving and we're going to, you have to hand over. We want you to be on the parade ground, and you must hand over your weapons, and you must hand over the keys, because you are not a unit anymore. And that once that CDF gets decided they're having a party the previous night, and they all tanked up when we arrived there. So the mechanized company surrounded the base so that they could see the 90s looking at them. And they were riding around the inside of the base with their little green mambas, little armored vehicles, showing us signs. I never forget that. And we decided, well, the only way we could get hold of this lot now with any bloodshed, or without any bloodshed, is Brigadier Toon Slabbert from EP Command. Him and I and our Dominee Tutoy, another person, I think it was our ops officer, we just decided we're flying into the base. So we flew into the base, left the chopper going, and the Dominee and I had to get out. We had to go talk to these guys. Maar hulle so getrek soos 'n rek, and they just want to fight. But eventually we defused the situation, and the whole CDF had to hand over their weapons and so on. I'm just touching the top of the iceberg now, I really am. But that was an exciting little period. And then, of course, came the rest of the year of 94, where we now had to start integrating and transforming into the SANDF. I remember out of the 7 forces that had to unite and to transform, it was the SADF, it was the 4 Transkei, Ciskei, Venda, Bophuthatswana armies, plus it was Mkhonto Wesizwe of the ANC, and APLA. APLA forces, those were the 7 that had to integrate. Now, just in Group 8, we had 4 of those 7, because we had the CDF, the SADF, Mkhonto Wesizwe, and APLA. I remember a Lieutenant Colonel, they started getting ranks then, a Lieutenant Colonel Lindili Yam of Mkhonto Wesizwe. He came and joined my headquarters, all for training purposes in East London. He eventually, by the way, became military attaché in London. He eventually became the chief of the army, part of the SANDF. And then I lost track of him. I don't know where he is now. That was very many years ago now. So he was there from representing Mkoto Wesizwe. There was a major shepherd Mpondo. Mpondo means shepherd. He was from Upla together with a major Peters. And then there was a guy from the CDF, Horst Schubesberger. As a German fellow. They all formed part of this whole transformation, unification setup while I was in Group 8 in East London. Just a quick story. After the 27th of April, the then premier of the CISCAI, Opakozo, he was also a general, I think, General Opakozo, he refuses to leave the palace in Bishu. Now we say to me, if you don't leave that general, you're going to move now. The CDF doesn't belong anymore, doesn't exist anymore. If you don't move there now, we have to come and take you out there. We won't hurt you, but we'll take you out. If you want to make force, there's going to be force. Him and his whole family stayed there. They refused to move out of the palace. So Chief of the Defence Force decides to get the recce's in. I think Group Nel was still in charge of them. They fly into Group 8 with a helicopter, and secretly they start planning how they're going to go to the palace in Bishu and to take him out and say, not to kill him, just to remove him, forcibly if it's necessary. And I remember they were still practicing this whole thing when out of the blue, nothing to do with the Defence Force, a member of the Public Works Department, PWD, a gentleman in a suit with a suitcase goes to the palace and he knocks on the door. And he says to Opakozo and them, listen, do you know it's costing you 3,000 Rand a month to live here? Because you're not allowed to live here anymore. Gozo gets a fright, packs up his family, climbs into his car and buggers off from the palace. En hier staan Kruben, Nel and the recce's with a broken grin waiting. They want to go and do hot extraction. That's just one of the very many stories I can remember. Then, yes, that was 1994 with Group 8. A great bunch of commando people. They all were, wherever we were. Then I get told at the end of 94 that one of the other staff officers in EP Command is now going to become the staff of the chief of staff. So I said to Brigadier Slabbert, sir, I've been the chief of staff now for 6 years in Northern Cape Command. And he looks at me, he says, yeah, we know that, but didn't you ask to come to East London? We thought you wanted to come and retire in East London. I said, no, man, I've still got 5 years to go to retirement. He says, well, in that case, I will make you the chief of staff. And there's the doors that opened after so many doors that had closed. So at the end of 1994, I get transferred for 1995 to Eastern Province Command as Brigadier Toon Slabbert's chief of staff. There we had Sergeant Major van Balen, was the command sergeant major. Later on, Sergeant Major Vic Walker took over. CS1 personnel was Jurg Krause, all colonels, not with us anymore. He's not with us anymore. Dennis Schoen was intelligence. Gary Brandt, the old pal of mine, lives just a couple of 100 meters from me. He was operations. Later on, Vernicker took over from him. Andre Snyman was the loggy. Charles Cumley took over from him. And Johan Engelbrecht was the command communication. The Finn guy, I can't remember, but if I do get his name, I will send it through sometime or other before this one comes out. So there I was. I'm now chief of staff again for my 6th year, for another 5. So for 11 years, I was a chief of staff, which I am so terribly grateful for, which of course is almost a third of my career. I was a chief of staff. Later on, the chiefs of staff got together and we made ourselves a little emblem. And that emblem was the Queen on the chessboard. Well, the idea is that the Queen can move anywhere on the board. She can move anywhere on the board. And her main job is to protect the king. And that's exactly what the chief of staff was. We were protecting our king, which was your command OC. Then in 1996, we told that the commands are now upgrading. They haven't got brigadiers in charge anymore. They're now going to lieutenant generals. Sorry, major generals. My apologies. Toon Slabbert was transferred to Chief of the Army in Pretoria, and Lieutenant, so here I go again, Major General Matanzima, who was at that stage our military attaché in London. He was appointed as Officer Commanding Eastern Province Command, General Officer Commanding, GOC. He arrived there in 96, and I was made, or I was kept as the chief of staff, but with a promotion to brigadier, which of course I always thought was one of the nicest ranks there are. Hy maak mos jou skouer vol. You know, you got a what's it, a castle and 3 pips on there. I enjoyed the brigadier story. But just a year, a couple of months later, they changed it from a brigadier to a brigadier general, which of course the generals didn't like, that brigadiers are now called generals. We always used to say that the chief of the defense forces got 4. The lieutenant generals are the tuxedo generals. The major generals are the longbroek generals. They're the long pants generals. And the brigadier generals are the kortbroek generals. We also see kortbroek generale. But so be it, we became brigadier generals. There were so many great things that happened at my time in EP Command. As of course it's the same thing as a chief of staff. Your job is not repetitive. It is repetitive, but it's never boring. You're always busy with the planning processes. You're always busy, I wouldn't say controlling, but coordinating the staffs. And with all respects, when General Matanzima and he's the guy that took over for General Mofokeng arrived, they knew nothing about our defense force. Nothing whatsoever. General Matanzima, as I said, was ex-Transkei Defense Force, and General Mofokeng was ex-APLA. So the chiefs of staff really were running the commands for the periods, let's say, into the middle to the end of the 90s. Right. Something's peeping here. All right, there we go. There were many projects that we did at EP Command. It was great. The messes were upgraded. There were gymnasiums built. The golf club was updated. Favorite memories of mine at EP Command was night golf. Used to play 18 holes of night golf. Generators giving you light, especially golf in the nacht. I remember, just to be funny, I've sent you the photo. We used to keep ourselves busy with little parties every now and again, and we actually had a band called, what was it? Jock Strap and the Symbols or something or other. I sent you a photo of that. There's old Saki, Colonel Saki de Klerk, with his 2 sons on guitars. I'm on the percussion. There's Gerry Brandt in front here, was the main singer. In the background, you'll see a guy wearing dark glasses. That's J.R. Liebenberg, an old friend of ours. He was Group 6 commander. And the guy sitting just below him was Marius van Eden, who was the commander of Humansdorp Commander. We all got together and we used to have great fun. Not that Liebenberg could sing. He used to mime. I couldn't sing, but he used to get dressed up like Elvis Presley. And on mime, you weet, a loving teddy bear. He became very famous for that, a loving teddy bear, Liebenberg. Anyway, coming towards the end now, General Mafokeng took over in 98 from General Matanzima, and Sergeant Major Walker was his Sergeant Major. I've got my diary, my last diary, that I was paging through, of course, before I started this conversation. And in there I could see how often the chiefs of staff got together. Now the chiefs of staff, I've sent you this photo as well, with the 9 commands, your 9 commands, plus your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 army formation chiefs of staff. So in total, we were just under 20 chiefs of staff that used to run the decentralized funds of the army. That's what kept me busy for 11 years, is running the, part of my job anyway, was running the finances, the decentralized funds, the day-to-day funds that you need. And you know, when you look now at how state funds are handled, and you think back to the days when you handled those couple of million rands, it's like chalk and cheese. You couldn't get away with anything. There were too many built-in things that kept you on the right path. You just couldn't move. You couldn't take a cent from anybody. And we were very proud of it, as chiefs of staff. The photo that you're going to see there, Chris, you'll see Eddie Viljoen sitting there in. He was chief of staff of Natal Command. He's sitting there in civilians. This was in Durban. I think he had an appointment that morning to go somewhere. Then there's the Xhosa Brigadier General sitting next to him, Brigadier Chiki. We're all brigadiers here still. We haven't become generals yet. And there sits the rest. Oh, Hans Heinze, yours truly, Chris Heeman, Robbie Coetzee. Here's my old gym buddy again. Yes, I can't believe we used to look like that. But there's Paul Strubel, and so on. There's Junior Botha. You'll see them all out there if you look at those. What an amazing group of people. They kept the army honest, financially wise. We used to run the finances. Anyway. Then throughout that period at EP Command and at Group 8, we had to do training of the new people coming in. You got people coming in with ranks sitting in the same office with the old SADF's personnel already there. So the offices are getting overcrowded. We're supposed to be teaching them how to do things. And then obviously the obvious happened. We now have to start taking our numbers down. The brigadiers are becoming top heavy. I think they still are, but that's beside the point. They're becoming top heavy. All the other posts that are in a command or in a unit becoming top heavy. So the culling starts, to put it crudely. And that is where we were offered to take our severance packages. They made me an offer I couldn't understand, so I took it. And that was the end of my military career in November 1999. Again, how do you try and put with a couple of conversations 35 years of experiences and stories. You can't do that. But thank you, Chris, for the opportunity that I had to at least do the top of the iceberg. It was just absolutely amazing. I thank my God every night for that. And I will continue thanking him for the amazing time that I could spend with these amazing people. Enough of that. 2000 onwards, I've now got my severance package. I buy the school I'm in now. My daughter runs that for me. I start a tourist business, a close corporation called Shield Tours. We actually concentrated on the 9 frontier wars that you find in this area, where the Xhosa fought against the Dutch and the British. For 25 years, I was busy, even while I was in the army, with guys like Umyori and Piet Hall. Piet Hall, he was a walking encyclopedia when it comes to the frontier wars. We gave so many tours through that area. First for military personnel, and then obviously for overseas tourists, where we took them through forts, fortifications, defensive posts, towns, cities, where all these wars were fought over 100 years. That was another period in my life I shall never forget. Starting to forget the detail of it now, but I still get excited when I think about the frontier wars. And then, of course, to end off, I'm an optimist by nature. I am not going to get mixed up in any, political discussion. Because a soldier is not a politician, will never be. There were a few that were in history. But soldiers are too, watch what you say, Alice. Soldiers are too honest. Soldiers have integrity. Soldiers are responsible for people's lives. It's not soldiers that declare war. Never has been. It is it's politicians who do. Now, I know we're going through a rough period after 94. Don't get me wrong. It was going to be inevitable. It was going to take a generation or two before we sorted this whole situation out. You could see things are changing now politically as well. And I want to say, if you take the history of all our peoples in South Africa, each one has got its own history that has made itself strong. The Dutch, the English, the Xhosa, the rest. We've all gone through things that have made us stronger. And I cannot see why, I don't know if it's going to be in my lifetime, why we can't really take those strengths that we've learned. We've been living with each other for how long anyway, in a beautiful country. And let's make this country as beautiful as what it can be. Because there's no ways that we could take the alternative. The alternative is, that's it. We got here with very little bloodshed. We must get rid of what's happening. You see, you can't have two wrongs making a right. Apartheid was an abomination. What's happening now is just as an abomination, if not worse. So we can't say this is now our turn. We're going to say, stop, let's get ourselves together and let's work as and build this nation. So, Koos, thank you again. I hope I've stirred a couple of memories amongst people that have been watching these conversations. And I'd like to end off with a thing that's hanging. It used to hang in my mom's dining room. Maybe people could remember it. It goes something like this. There's so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us that it hardly behooves any of us to talk or criticize the rest of us. Let's get ourselves together. Let's get this nation where it should be. and where it's going to be, because I'm an optimist by nature. Chris, to you and your team, thank you very much. I really did enjoy it.